Hello and welcome to the regular business meeting for the District of Squamish. Today is Tuesday, October 17th, 2023. As always, we're gathered to do our work today on the traditional unceded territories of the Squamish Nation. Please be advised this council meeting is being live streamed, recorded, and will be available to the public to view on the District of Squamish website following the meeting. If you have concerns, please notify the corporate officer present at the meeting. Council, I'm looking for a motion to adopt the the agenda as amended. Thank you. Moved by Councillor French, second by Councillor Stoner. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. First, we have first order of business is a proclamation request for Medical Radiation Technologist Week proclamation. This was included in your package, and we do not have anyone coming to speak to this. Would someone like to move this? Moved by Councillor French, second by Councillor Hamilton. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor French?
Oh, sure. It's great to hear from longtime Squamish residents who are not necessarily fully connected to the community, but clearly connected enough to be able to head up an initiative like this one. So Natalie, who was the person who corresponded with us requesting this declaration, I believe she grew up in Squamish. And the folks who work in this industry do a fabulous job in our medical settings, which are challenging places these days. So I think that it's worthy of us to declare Medical Radiation Technologist Week.
Thank you. Any other comments on this? Generally, I've been, when we get these proclamation requests, I've been looking for organizations that will come and speak to the request, because we do get a lot of these. But I thought with the addition of the news that the CT scanner is coming to the Squamish General Hospital soon, that it was appropriate to put this piece here as this important piece of technology, and feels like it fits in this category, so I'm happy to support. So with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries. Or any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next piece, the next item on our agenda is consideration of unscheduled public attendance. This is where if a member of the public had a matter that couldn't wait until the next council meeting to be heard, you could raise that at this point. Yes, go ahead. You can approach the podium, and just to be clear on process before we get underway, you start by stating your name and which neighborhood and all you're from, and also if this is your opportunity to address council as to why your matter is urgent and can't wait until the next council meeting, not so much engaging on the issue itself. That opportunity is later on in the agenda. Just to be clear, but the floor is yours. Go away.
My name is...
Take it away is what I meant to say. I'm so sorry, Thomasina.
It's okay.
Yes, go ahead.
My name is Thomasina Pigeon. I live downtown Squamish in my vehicle, and I'm here as a member of the Vehicle Residents of Squamish. I'm here to follow up on an open letter to the District of Squamish that we had sent out to you guys about a month ago. There's about 146 signatures that you should have received. And we have not heard back from anybody aside from Lauren Greenlaw, sorry. And so it is an urgent issue, as the letter stated. People are being punished for living in their vehicles. We have no safe place to live, and it's basically being stigmatized. And as you know, there's been a few violent incidents this summer, and we're following up on the push for inclusive policy for vehicle residents. That's why it cannot wait another 4 years like it's already been.
Okay. You still have some time on the clock. I just want to coach you that the matter that we'd be wanting to consider is whether it's urgent enough to be discussed this evening, or if scheduling a time to discuss this as it sort of fits in with with
Yeah,
the rest of the
it's
province.
urgent enough to speak of this evening because it's been 4 years since we've been waiting for inclusive policy. No one of you guys have responded to our letters and our demands. And also the budget is coming up on December 8th, I believe, and it's pertinent that our needs as citizens of Squamish and also the visitors here are listened to.
Okay, thank you. So council, we've heard from Ms. Pigeon the matter and that she'd like to discuss. And again, that portion for consideration of unscheduled public attendance does happen later on in the agenda. So our decision here is at this point is whether it's meets the threshold of an urgent matter that needs to be discussed here tonight versus being brought forward at the next next regular council meeting, which would be in 2 weeks or some other time that we deem appropriate. So it would be take a motion to I'd be looking for a motion from council on this. Go ahead, Councillor Hamilton.
I would move that we hear the issue in 2 weeks' time at the next council meeting, that it is scheduled at a time for the next council meeting to have a discussion.
Okay, is there a seconder for that? Seconded by Councillor Stoner. Thank you. Would you like to speak to this motion?
I absolutely agree. Sorry, I was looking for Thomasina there. I absolutely agree that vehicle residency is an important issue in our town, a challenging issue, one that has no clear solutions at this time that I can see. And I definitely recognize, and I definitely think it is very important for us to have the discussion, have a conversation, and try to find solutions. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Stoner.
Yeah, I'm supporting the motion to move this conversation to a future meeting in 2 weeks' time because I think it requires our staff to be prepared for it and for council to be prepared for it and for our community to be prepared for it. It's not a simple solution that we're going to be able to solve tonight. So appreciate showing up, appreciate the ongoing correspondence, but it requires more than what I think we have available on our agenda, and I don't think we're going to be able to solve it this evening. And it's I don't see the matter as pressing in terms of finding the solution today or 2 weeks' time. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to add a point of clarity here. It's the next regular business meeting, and which is actually the 7th of November. Is that fits the intent of the mover and the seconder? Okay, go ahead, Councillor French.
Thanks, Mayor. And speaking in favor of the motion, I was going to point out that slight technicality. October has 5 Tuesdays, so we do not meet on the 31st, which means the next opportunity for us to discuss this in a regular meeting is, as you point out, the 7th of November. I look forward to having the conversation at that time.
Councillor Greenlaw.
I'd also like to speak in favor of the motion, but I'd also like to point out that both Mayor Herford and I will be absent from the November 7th meeting. And I do wonder if this is a topic that is more suitable for a committee of the whole. I don't know if that is accurate or not. But I would like to see this expedited. I would like to see a staff presentation on it. And I would like it to be a fulsome conversation.
Thank you. Any other comments on this before I venture my own? I do think that rightly the committee of the whole is likely the place for this. And for those in the audience that aren't familiar with our process, that's where longer form conversations can be had. And it strikes me that this particular issue is incredibly complex and to handle. And I think that that's likely to reach an outcome where we've arrive at sort of a useful place by engaging with this. I do think committee of the whole is the appropriate place for this. So I think that and as to who's attending, I think that generally the business of the municipality needs to keep moving, and that's why we have quorum rules and so on. But I do think that that committee of the whole is the best place for this. So I'd look to the mover to maybe, yeah, do you have a, yeah. Well, I'll move to amend the motion to say an upcoming committee the whole meeting.
Can I amend to November 12th, that committee of the whole? So that it has a date that it's coming back? Sorry, November 14th.
Yeah, November 14th. So yeah, to November 14th committee of the whole. To be specific about it, which I like that. That's fine. So how about, that's my motion and you seconded it. How's that? Is that okay? Okay.
Sounds good.
And so on the amendment, all in favor of the amendment? Motion carries. Thank you. We're back to the main motion as amended. Sorry, Councillor Pettingill, I see your hand.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you. Now, one of my colleagues mentioned a staff report. My understanding that the current resolution is for sort of a discussion. I assume that to direct staff to do a report and so on, we expect a little bit more. I just want to make sure we're sort of getting what we expect on the 14th.
Well, no, that's an excellent point, and I think that I think that at that point in time we'll have to go with the information that we have available to us, and perhaps an outcome of that meeting is to send staff off to do some work. So I'm if there's an expectation of an in-depth report, then that isn't something that's going to happen by that time, and I think that speaks to the urgency that we've heard from Ms. Pigeon today, and I think we need to start somewhere. So that's the proposed starting point for that discussion at this point. Any other comments on this motion as amended? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Next, we have no public hearings. We do have some. We're onto the consent agenda. If anyone would like to pull anything from the consent agenda, Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, I wanted to pull 6B2 and B3. That's the BC Energy Regulator and Fortis letters.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, can I just clarify, Councillor Pettingill, was that B1 is the energy regulator, B2 is Fortis?
And B3 is wood fiber LNG.
Okay. Not the wood fiber one. Sorry, my intent was the energy regulator and the Fortis.
Okay.
Emails.
So that's B1 and 2.
Okay, my
So we'll
apologies.
pull item B1 and 2. Is someone, could I have someone move the consent agenda with those items removed? Moved by Councillor Hamilton, second by Councillor Stoner. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. So, Councillor Pettingill, we'll get to those correspondence pieces a little bit later. Now we've got recommendations from Committee of the Whole of October 10th. First is the Circular Economy Roadmap Update. Moved by Councillor Stoner, second by Councillor Hamilton. Any comments? Nope. All in favor? Any opposed? Councillor Pettingill, I just want to make sure your timing on if it's a lag. Were you opposed to that or no? No. Okay. Motion carries. Thank you. Next is the 2023 Transit 3-year expansion MOU. Moved by Councillor French and seconded by Councillor Stoner. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next order of business is the Cemetery Master Plan endorsement. Councillor Anderson, moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Greenlaw. I see no hands for comments, so I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next up, we have the Redbridge LDA, and I did have, it does appear later in the agenda, but I thought this might be an opportunity to provide some staff to provide a little bit of update on this item as it's here, and carts and horses feel a bit different feels strange to approve something here that happens later in the agenda as well. So would you like to speak to?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Carrie Hamilton, planner at the District of Squamish. And I'm just here today to give you a quick verbal update on the LD amendment that was discussed at the October 10th Committee of the Whole meeting. So we were able to go back to the developer and discuss the two changes that the committee had requested. So before you today is a revised LDA that includes the removal of the strata only language for the car share. And it includes an increase to the CAC amount from 60,000 to 175,000. And that is because the kayak launch does actually require the Crown Land tenure, and so will be impacted by those timeline requests, and they weren't able to achieve the phase 4 timeline that was requested.
Okay, thank you. Council, I have, you have a question on this? Go ahead.
I recognize that the third item is referred to a committee of the whole. Was there any conversation with the developer about the third item?
Through the mayor, the third item will be coming back to a committee of the whole at a future date.
Okay. Councillor Stoner?
Clarification on where we're at in the agenda. This item does come up later. Are we voting
So
on? the
what I have
recommendation?
a,
Okay.
yeah,
Got it.
we're getting there. Any other questions for staff on this item? Yep, go ahead.
Appreciate the conversations that have happened to date. One outstanding item that I mentioned, to be fair, not in my motion, but in my comments, was trying to find some level of security for the bridge, given that it's being moved to phase 5. Was that part of your discussion with the developer in terms of securing a cash security in advance of the bridge being delivered?
So through the mayor, there were some discussions of those options. However, we were directed based on the motion, and the applicant decided to agree to the terms that council set in that motion. One of the things to note is that there is a date for the delivery of that bridge. It's not just attached to the phase 5. And so should they not meet that date of construction, then they would be not in compliance with the LDA, and we would have some authority to try and achieve that construction.
What authority do we have to actually force them to build the bridge if they don't do so by the time that's allotted in the LDA?
Through the mayor, they would be not in compliant with the land development agreement.
But if for some reason at that point they have no interest in building phase 5 and 6, then they won't really care. Is that true? Is there anything else if they're not in compliance with the LDA, then so what?
Through the mayor, my name is Jonas Volniškis, Senior Director of Community Development. We expect a number of amendments as this development goes through the process in the LDA. They have security currently tied up in the current offsite work, so they have a servicing agreement for. We're going to be coming back on another item to a committee meeting to discuss changes in the LDA. So I think we're just delaying that to a future date. We will get a security for it before phase 4 is finished. So I think we don't have any concern that, it was a valid point and we will address it, just not at this point. We had to rush to get these changes done.
Okay, so, Councillor Greenlaw?
Do we have any ability to say that if it doesn't commence construction before phase 5 or after phase 5, for whatever the timing is, that we can just get cash in lieu for this bridge? Is it possible to put that wording in as some sort of security to make sure that we do receive the asset that we've been promised?
Through the mayor, that would require further changes to the land development agreement to allow for that.
If I can just add, we will be getting a security for this bridge when the servicing agreement gets done for it.
Okay, so that's coming at a later point in the process. So council, just to be extra transparent, what I'm gonna do is suspend the order of the agenda to reflect that we're on effectively item 9B4. And I do have a motion here so that so this is that council authorized the mayor and corporate officer to execute the park option to purchase date amendments only to the land development agreement for Red Bridge development as prepared in attachment 1 of the Red Bridge LDA agreement, and council authorized the mayor and corporate officer to execute the land development agreement for Red Bridge development as amended to include the following: use of the car share program should not be limited to strata only. Kayak launch to be delivered at occupation of phase 4. And if not possible, the cash contribution amenity should be. Carrie's nodding her head or shaking her head. Okay, sorry.
Apologies. I just wanted to add that because the motion was split out for the park option, we also need a motion that approves all the other amendments that were proposed in the committee meeting on October 10th, as well as these changes. So just if the wording could speak to those two things, that would be helpful.
The staff recommendation is evolving. Okay. All right, I'm going to go back to, sorry, I have to go back to the beginning if you could point me to where that, so just give me 1 second. We're going to get, this is happening in real time, folks. Okay, here we go. I'm going to start from the beginning so we stand a chance of following. Council authorized the mayor and corporate officer to execute the park option to purchase date amendments only to the land development agreement for Red Bridge development as prepared in attachment 1 of the Red Bridge land development agreement. And council authorized the mayor and corporate officer to execute the land development agreement for Red Bridge developments as amended per direction of the committee of the whole meeting on October 10th, 2023, and as presented to council today on October 17th, 2023, to reflect, to include use of the car share program should not be limited to strata only, kayak launch to be delivered at occupation of phase 4, and if not possible, the cash contribution amenity should be updated to current policy targets. And then the final item is the land development agreement clause 11B5 be referred to future committee of the whole for future consideration. Everyone. Yeah, go ahead. See Councillor Stoner.
Can I just clarify with staff, when do we actually secure a security from the developer with respect to the bridge?
So through the mayor, we would secure security at servicing agreement. So this will be after development permit agreement.
Or which phase?
There's no timing attached to that.
Councillor Anderson seconds the motion. And I'll speak to this briefly. I think I really appreciate the update and the work that's happened to date. I think this LDA is going to have acknowledged this LDA is going to have more work performed on it, and I think it has a ways to go before it's all the way there. And as I've heard some of the concerns around the table, but there'll be another touch point. So for this one, I'm happy that it's moved as far as it has at this point in time. I think that's as far as it could practically go. I'll go to Councillor Hamilton and then Councillor Stoner. Go to Councillor Stoner.
Can you please repeat the motion?
Last time I did
Please.
that, it killed the mic. So I'm going to go to the record taker to make sure that it's read.
The motion that I have is that council authorize the mayor and corporate officer to execute the park option to purchase date amendments only to the land development agreement for Red Bridge development as prepared in attachment 1 of the Red Bridge land development agreement. And 2, that council authorize the mayor and corporate officer to execute the land development agreement for Red Bridge development as amended per the direction of the committee of the whole meeting on October 10th and as presented to council here today, and also to include the use of the car share program should not be limited to strata only, and the kayak launch to be delivered at occupation of phase 4, and if not possible, the cash contribution amenity should be updated to current policy targets. And 3, the land development agreement clause 11B5 be referred to a future committee of the whole for further consideration.
Thank you for that clarity. I'd like to move that we sever the motion and vote on the parks component separate from the LDA amendment.
Okay, you're seconding that? Do you want to speak to it, Councillor Stoner?
Yeah, I think that it's important that we sever these because one is time sensitive and the other one puts us at risk if we move it forward too quickly.
Okay, so on the amendment, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. So now that we've severed them, we're going to deal with the first question, which is the park motion. And I don't see any hands for comments on this, so I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. And now we're on to the second part, which is essentially the rest of the motion. It was broken into 2 pieces with that amendment, just so clear. Yeah, so the rest of the motion. And I'll be looking for comments on the pieces that are left. Councillor Stoner?
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, I won't be supporting this at this time, and I'm regretting that my motion at committee of the whole wasn't more clear, and that I just made it in comments that I don't feel comfortable moving the bridge to phase 5 without having a clear identification of date that we would actually be receiving the securities from the developer on it. I think that puts us at risk of not securing the funds that we need to be able to provide this or that this amenity gets provided to our community as expected, and we potentially have the risk of 4 phases that get built out and no bridge and then no future phase 5 and 6. And so I just don't see the security here that I think I need to be able to support the changes that have been made to date. I appreciate the work that staff and the developer have done in the past week to get this to where it is. I appreciate that was some quick conversation, but there's still a big gap there for me. Thanks.
Thank you. I just want to recognize staff here. There's a motion on the floor, but for clarity, please.
Through the mayor, I just want to clarify one element that the land development agreement does secure a date that this would have to be constructed by, and that's October 17th, 2025. So there is a security to have it constructed. However, it doesn't speak to security to hold the servicing agreement bonding. But in order to start construction, you would have to go through a servicing agreement to do that. So essentially, it's kind of like a date, but it's not exactly per what Councillor Stoner is looking for.
I think I appreciate the clarification. It still doesn't actually require, there's no consequence if the developer doesn't actually build the bridge.
We, like any department from the land development agreement, we have legal recourse to make the developer meet their commitments.
I'll let you ponder that, Councillor Stoner. And any other comments on this topic? Oh, Councillor Pettingill, go ahead.
Well, I'm hoping I can ask a clarifying question I missed earlier. I heard staff say, I think, that the servicing agreement is required to move forward with a DP, but a DP for what stage? Because it sounds like that is a point where this has to be resolved or security acquired, attached to a servicing agreement attached to a DP. So are we talking about a phase 5 DP or before the next DP for any phase, or what are we talking about here? Or am I misunderstanding something?
So through the mayor and the land development agreement, I believe it's in section 13 and 14, they provide a number of language that specifies conditions on how they can move forward. And that includes the date in that discussion, as well as not being able to get a building permit for phase 5 if construction of the bridge is not commenced.
Okay. Council, any other comments on this? Go ahead, Councillor Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks. I'm just seeking clarification on Mr. Valenesca's comment that the developer can be held accountable to the land development agreement. And from Ms. Hamilton's comment of this falling in section 13. Section 13 reads, for the development of phase 1 to phase 6 lands, as applicable, the developer further covenants and agrees with the district that A, B, C, which one am I looking for the bridge? The bridge, Section D, that they commence construction of the bridge. Is that the piece that legally binds the developer to build the bridge independent of whether they commence with phase 5?
We were just trying to find the section you're referring to. Could you mention the section again?
13D.
Through the mayor, I just want to confirm that that is one of the sections that speaks to this. This particular one in 13 is trying to speak to the clauses on if the Crown land tenure, if there's some delays, there are some contingency built into that, but that we wanted to assure that they are moving diligently on the construction and the permitting process. So that's what that particular language is speaking to that you're referring to. I believe there's Section 14 and 16 were noted as changes in the LDA to speak to this date again, but it is one of the locations in which the date is noted.
Okay, Council, we do have a question before us. I spoke to this when they were all grouped, and I'll venture some opinion here. We're hearing from our staff that there's a level of comfort that they can address our concerns through the processes as it's laid out. I'd also remind Council that a LDA is a negotiated agreement and both parties need to agree to. So I think, and I have a level of comfort that that this is something that will happen, and I know that we're going to need to touch this LDA again. So I think this is as far as I'm comfortable with it at this point. So I'll be supporting the motion. Councillor French.
Thanks, Mayor Herford. I share your level of comfort, and I'll be voting in support.
Thank you. I'm going to call the question. All in favor? And opposed? We've got Councillor Stoner, Greenlaw, Pettingill opposed. Motion carries. Thank you. Next up, we have the final recommendation from Committee of the Whole is the Community Amenity Contribution Policy Review Update, which I will move if there's a seconder. Seconded by Councillor Hamilton. Thank you. Any comments on this? Not seeing any. I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And now we're on to section 8A, bylaws, first and second reading. I'll pass it over to Mr. Daly.
Thank you, Mayor Herford. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Brian Daly, planner with Community Planning. I'm here tonight to present a revised bylaw related to affordable housing and public service zoning bylaw amendments that were recently presented to Council. The bylaws presented tonight are for consideration of first and second reading. At the July 18th, 2023 regular council meeting, Council gave bylaw 3000 first and second reading and scheduled a public hearing for October 3rd. Due to additional considerations surfaced by staff prior to the public hearing, the hearing scheduled for bylaw 3000 on October 3rd was canceled. Additional considerations raised by staff relate to the level of flood hazard on properties in a debris flow hazard area or a controlled densification area. This issue is also relevant to the public service use amendments proposed in bylaw 2976, which was given third reading at September 12th, 2023 regular council meeting. The issues with both these bylaws have now been addressed in the bylaw amendment that's being presented this evening. So staff have identified that the amendments proposed as part of bylaw 3000 could allow for higher residential density in debris flow hazard areas and controlled densification areas than what is supported in the hazard lands policies in section 11 of the official community plan. To address this discrepancy, staff are proposing to add conditions of use clarifying that affordable housing use, including affordable housing that falls under the definition of public service and public service use, is not permitted at densities higher than existing zoning if the property is located in a debris flow hazard area, a restricted densification area, or a limited densification area. An additional condition is included to clarify that affordable housing use and public service use on a property located in a conditional densification area is permitted if specific conditions identified in the OCP are met. These conditions have been brought into the zoning bylaw amendment for clarity. The amendments proposed as part of bylaw 2976, the P2 amendments, have also been included as part of this bylaw. These include a revised definition of public service to include services provided by the provincial or federal government, and includes affordable housing provided by a government agency or nonprofit. And the amendment also proposes to add neighborhood commercial as an accessory use in the P2 zone. Based on provincial targets identified in the District of Squamish 2023 Housing Needs Report, 9,600 new housing units will be required in Squamish by 2036. 6,840 of these will be required by 2031. Of the 6,840, 42% will need to be affordable to households earning below $70,000 per year. One way to increase supply is to remove density limitations for affordable housing projects from the zoning bylaw, so they could more viably be established across the community. The amendments intend to help remove barriers and facilitate affordable housing in any zone where residential is a principal use. Bylaw 3018 proposes to replace section 4.49 with new general regulations related to affordable housing. These general regulations would allow affordable housing in any zone where residential is a principal use, allow the height of a principal building where all the units are secured as affordable housing to increase to 23 meters or 6 stories, exempt affordable housing buildings from lot coverage, apply a parking requirement of 1 space per dwelling unit for affordable housing units, exempt gross floor area associated with affordable housing from the gross floor area calculations. As previously mentioned, it also has stipulations related to not allowing this use to exceed the permitted densities in a debris flow hazard area or a restricted densification area. And finally, there is an amendment to section 4.10, height of buildings and structures, to apply a maximum building height of 26.5 meters or 8 stories, whichever is less, in any zone that may permit a taller building height. As this is currently the tallest building height that the district's fire department can safely fight a fire in, there are a few zones that allow for a building height taller than this, including UC1, UH1, CD37, CD61, and CD99. So the last time this was brought, when the affordable housing amendments were originally brought for consideration of first and second reading to council, council requested some visualizations to get an idea of what these amendments might look like on a typical RS1 lot. So staff did some high-level calculations, and it would require upwards of 6 typical RS1 lots to be accommodated or to be consolidated to accommodate the required parking for a 40-unit building. A building with fewer than 40 units would not likely require the 23-meter height. In discussions with the Squamish Community Housing Society, affordable housing developments under 6 stories do not typically receive financing as they do not contain enough units to make a project viable. The Spirit Creek Affordable Housing Building, which opened in 2023, had 76 units and is 5 stories in height. This was constructed on a 5,330 square meter parcel, which would be roughly the equivalent area of 8 RS1 lots. Given the current market value of RS1 zone properties, it is unlikely that an affordable rental housing project would be acquiring multiple RS1 lots and taking advantage of the relaxations proposed in the zoning bylaw amendment. The intention behind the amendments in this bylaw are to remove density limitations in the zoning bylaw and eliminate the rezoning process that is often required for these projects. This could save 6 months to a year in the development process and allow for affordable rental projects to be delivered to the market faster. The blanket rezoning for residential properties to allow for viable affordable housing projects will provide a significant advantage to nonprofits and government agencies in delivering affordable housing in any Squamish neighborhood. So planning staff held an open house on the proposed affordable housing amendments that were previously presented. The event was well attended with approximately 20 members of the public in attendance. Staff outlined the proposed amendments and associated rationale, took clarifying questions from the public, and then allowed for an open discussion. The majority of those in attendance were property owners who agreed there's a need for affordable housing, but were concerned about the neighborhood impacts associated with allowing buildings up to 6 stories with a reduced parking standard in all zones. Overall, the conversation was productive and informative for staff and attendees. Staff clarified that the amendments were targeting publicly funded non-market rental projects and are relying on the district's partnerships with community housing providers to resolve location and massing issues, rather than restricting development through zoning. Attendees highlighted the need for clarity in communicating with the public to highlight the objectives of the amendment. There were a number of concerns that the public highlighted. The impact of 6-story buildings on adjacent properties, including shade, effect on neighborhood character, effect on property values, and setting a precedent for building height in low-density neighborhoods, where excess parking will go from residents of a future building, whether existing infrastructure has the capacity for this type of development, blanket zoning amendments as opposed to spot zoning in certain locations to try out the regulations first to see if there are unintended consequences. There were a few attendees who were supportive of the amendments, including one resident who thought that the relaxations, particularly related to parking stalls, should be further reduced to try and make affordable rental housing projects as viable as possible. So staff are recommending that bylaw 3018 be given first and second reading and that a public hearing be scheduled for November 7th. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take questions at this time.
Thank you for the presentation. Council, questions on what we've heard? We've essentially seen this once before with a new layer added. Councillor Pettingill, then Stoner.
Yeah, and just reviewing some of the feedback from the Housing Society, did we look at further reductions in parking requirements for when these units are placed on transit routes or core transit routes? Because it seems we're still, if someone needs an affordable unit, you're going to have to pay for a parking spot, whether or not you're trying not to have a car as part of managing your affordability. And just wondering if it seems, if I understand this, for an affordable unit to building to consider that sort of thing, they'd still have to come for a rezoning, given what we're proposing. Is that correct?
Through the mayor, no, parking could be varied through a development variance permit, which these projects would still be required to do for form and character. And depending on what land development procedures bylaw amendments come forward in the near future, that may be delegated to staff. So that would not require a rezoning process.
Okay, thanks. And just, sorry, is there a reason that we didn't sort of consider a transit route exception out of the box, other than maybe council didn't raise that earlier? Yeah.
Staff thought it was reasonable to start with a parking reduction to 1 stall per unit across the entire community for affordable rental housing. If a project were to, as previously mentioned, if a project were to come forward that was close to transit and had solid rationale to further reduce the parking requirement, there is the ability to do that through the development variance permit process.
If I could just add, one consideration that we do have is the grant with the CMHC for Housing Accelerator Fund includes a number of projects, and one of those projects would be looking at well-serviced areas for infrastructure and transit, and seeing if we can improve density or increase density there and reduce some of the requirements like parking. So that's a future project.
You're good, Councillor Pettingill? Yep. Councillor Stoner.
Thank you. Through the chair. My first question is, I'm still unclear as to whether these amendments would apply to a building that was built under the Community Housing Fund. So that CHF fund requires that 20% of the units are market rental. So not defined as affordable, and everything that we have here is 100% affordable. So have we overlooked a piece of the funding puzzle here for affordable housing?
Through the mayor, so there's two separate definitions. There's the definition of affordable housing, and there's the definition of public service, which includes affordable housing use provided by a nonprofit or government agency. I would interpret this definition to include also market rental housing provided by a nonprofit or government agency as under the public service use. The affordable housing, the separate affordable housing general regulations would apply to buildings that are 100% secured as affordable rental housing, if that makes sense. So it's kind of two separate general regulations.
So the amendments on the affordable housing component per se, not the public service lands, but the affordable housing blanket rezoning wouldn't enable the CHF funded proposals.
No, it would not. The public service one would, which is typically what we're seeing. There is language that speaks to affordable housing securing item or having entered into a housing agreement with the District of Squamish that has some sort of tenancy limitations and rental restrictions. So there could be open to interpretation that if this is negotiated through a housing agreement, that a project would be able to still take advantage of those affordable housing amendment relaxations.
I could just also add, all of the projects that include affordable housing have to go through a housing agreement process, which is a bylaw. And we didn't want to design the blanket amendment to fit a specific funding program. So if we do run into issues such as that, where we need to have a mix of market and affordable, I think we would run that process through the housing agreement bylaw. And with the new public hearing rules, it's a very straightforward spot zoning amendment to fit the application for funding to the zoning in place, and we could do that through the housing agreement. So that's the rationale why we didn't try to fit it in a certain box.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. My second question is, appreciate the high-level calculations and the visualization of how many RS1 lots it would typically actually take to consolidate to make a project work. I think that helps put a bit of a realistic lens on what might happen here. The other elements of this bylaw speak about gross floor area exemptions and lot coverage exemptions, and I'm unclear how those might impact the design of these buildings. And neighboring interactions. And I'm just wondering if you can speak to how we can maybe think about those. My understanding is that setbacks would still apply, but how would like a GFA or lot coverage exemption shift how a building might relate to its neighboring buildings?
So through the mayor, it obviously, if you're exempting lot coverage and gross floor area, you are allowing more massing on a lot than would typically be allowed. There is still a form and character development permit process to go through. So obviously that's where staff would try and work with an applicant to address concerns related to massing and negative impacts on adjacent properties. But the idea here was to try and make it as flexible as possible and not require a rezoning process or multiple variances.
If I could just add also, the other issue is because we're doing a blanket amendment, each zone has sort of different lot coverage and gross floor area limits. So that's why it wouldn't work if we tried to do this under existing zoning or existing limitations. With less parking, that's when like our regulations right now exclude parking from gross floor area calculations. So with less parking, then we can do more gross floor area in the same box, essentially.
Okay. And then my last question is around the height of buildings and structures component of the amendment. Appreciate you including in one of your slides the zones that it currently applies to. I can think of where 3 of those are, but can you actually identify where the other ones are? So the UH1, UH or UC ones are up in the university lands. CD 69 is the oceanfront. Where are the other CD parcels?
Through the mayor, they're all downtown. There's one downtown south. I think there is one of them, I believe, is Hunter Place, but it's written in a way that it's 6 stories or a building height that is higher than 27.6 meters. So that's a bit unique, but they're pretty much all downtown.
Okay. And so are there any implications in terms of thinking of the oceanfront in particular, which is in a phased development agreement? The zoning has been established to us then changing that for specific CD zones?
Through the mayor, it won't apply to the oceanfront. They have their own version of the zoning bylaw. But I believe in discussions with developers, once you go over 6 stories in building height, the costs of construction are quite a bit higher, and it has been an issue on certain projects that have been getting worked on. So we're not seeing too many buildings exceeding that height. And we just wanted to clarify that in the zoning bylaw for folks who are looking to potentially develop in these zones that allow this higher building height, that it's clear that currently the fire department can only fight a fire in a building this tall.
Okay. And then my other follow on to that is appreciate that you just said that building above 6 stories is much more expensive, but our general height limitation you're proposing is 8 stories, but we're limiting the affordable housing buildings to 6 stories. So why wouldn't we just give them the maximum height?
Through the mayor, this was just recognizing that this is a blanket zoning bylaw amendment across all zones that permit residential, and that 8 stories would be a lot in certain low density neighborhoods, and also for the same reason that the cost of construction is so much higher to go above a 6-story building, that in discussions with the Housing Society, you're not really seeing projects go that high for affordable rental because the margins are so slim currently.
Thank you. Council, other questions? Seeing none, we do have a staff recommendation. Are you moving the staff recommendation?
Yep.
In its entirety? It is seconded by Councillor French. Would you like to speak to it?
I think that this kind of blanket move to open up our zoning, I think is a really powerful step towards finding solutions without having very challenging discussions with the immediately impacted neighbors. There's going to be immediately impacted neighbors on every project that happens every time there's an advancement or a change in our building zoning. And so I think this is a way that we can all accept that when a project is viable and affordable, it can move forward. So thanks very much.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor French.
Thanks, Mayor. My support of this motion is summed up in a thought that was provided to us by Sarah Ellis, the Executive Director of the Squamish Community Housing Society. And I'll paraphrase here. To make below market housing happen, heightened density is needed for financial viability, even when senior levels of government are helping with the funding. Proceeding without a rezoning is an important element to making these needed developments happen. Thanks.
Thank you. Other comments on this? Go ahead, Councillor Stoner.
Yeah, I will be supporting this moving through first and second reading. As per my numerous questions, I still have a few hesitations that, well, I think that this is the right step, that we may be missing a few pieces. And I think this is where I'm wrestling with moving fast and getting it right, or taking a little bit more time. But I think that appreciate the initial public engagement that staff went back out and did, as well as dotting our I's and crossing our T's with the restricted densification areas and our flood hazard management. I don't think anybody wants to be putting affordable housing in high risk areas. So that is critical. And I think that this is ready to go out to public hearing on November 7th. And look forward to hearing from the public on it and moving this forward. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, I'm going to be supporting this. There are a few questions that I still have, and I'm still wondering if we've gone far enough in a few places. I guess the benefit there is in not going far enough, we have the opportunity to go further without large regrets. Whereas if we went too far, we might get some things that we can't pull back on until it's too late. And so, well, I think there's a couple things where maybe we could consider going a bit further. I think this is supportable. I do still have some hesitation. I brought it up a while ago about the blanket removal of the restrictions on where some of the appliances, outdoor appliances go. I see that as an opportunity to pull back on gas appliances. I'm hoping that we will deal with that soon, though, with the zero carbon or low carbon step code in a more blanket way, though. So that's how I'm telling myself that it's okay to move forward on this one as it is. And so, yeah, happy to support this. Thanks.
Thank you. Council, any other comments? See none. I'll speak in support of the motion. I think that we know that affordable housing is a critical need in our community, and this is us effectively getting out of the way as much as practical with our regulations to facilitate that construction in that area. I'm happy to look forward to a time where we're working inside of this framework, and if projects come forward where this framework hasn't pushed far enough, it's at least moved the starting point for us to a much better place, and we can see what has to happen on the specific projects through a development variance permit or whatever other actions needed to actually get them across the line. But this effectively moves affordable housing forward in our community, and I think in a very meaningful way. So I'm happy to support, and thank you for your work on this. And yeah, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much. Okay, Council, next we're on to adoption. We have as per normal, we have no presentations with this, but we do need to do them individually, and there's a few of them. These are, we start with the permissive tax exemption. This is the 1 year for Sea to Sky Montessori Society, bylaw 3013/2023, moved by Councillor French, moved and second by Councillor Anderson. All in favor? And opposed? Councillor Stoner, Hamilton, and Pettingill opposed. Motion carries. Thank you. Next is District of Squamish 2024 permissive tax exemption, 4 years. The 4-year exemptions, which is bylaw number 3015/2023. And there are 6 items there, and we'll do those all together. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor French, and
Sorry, we're moving.
oh, I'm moving. Sorry, that was 3015, the 4-year exemption.
This is just item 2.
Oh, sorry, it's just item 2. Sorry, I thought they were all grouped right. Just item 2.
Item 2.
Just item 2. Moved by Councillor French, second by Councillor Hamilton. Sorry, I got ahead of myself there. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Now we're on to District of Squamish Permissive Tax Exemption, the 1 year for Squamish Helping Hands Society, which is bylaw number 3016/2023. Moved by Councillor Stoner, second by Councillor Hamilton. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have District of Squamish 2024 Permissive Tax Exemption. This is a 1 year for Sea to Sky Community Services, bylaw number 3017/2023. Moved by Councillor Greenlaw, second by Councillor Anderson. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next is District of Squamish 2024 Permissive Tax Exemption 1 year, Squamish Valley Golf and Country Club, bylaw number 3014/2023. Moved by Councillor. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Councillor Anderson.
Mayor Herford, I wish to declare a conflict on this item. As a curling club member, my fees can be affected by the fate of the application of the affiliated golf club. So I'll step out of the room until I'm called.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Okay, I'm looking for a mover. Moved by Councillor Stoner, second by Councillor French. All in favor? Any opposed? Councillor Hamilton opposes. Motion carries. Thank you. Yeah, do you want to grab Councillor Anderson back? Hopefully we didn't go too far. So next we're on to item 6, District of Squamish zoning bylaw number 2200-2011 amendment bylaw. This pertains to 37707 Second Avenue and is bylaw number 2922/2022. Moved by Councillor Hamilton, and I'll second that. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have staff reports. We have from corporate services. We have a change to the 2023 acting mayor schedule, and the recommendation is that council amend the 2023 acting mayor schedule as follows: Councillor Stoner to November 2023, and Councillor Greenlaw to December 2023. And this is just for very practical reasons, as Councillor Greenlaw will be traveling for a big chunk of November on municipal business. So it makes sense to switch it this way, in my opinion. Moved by Councillor Stoner, second by Councillor Greenlaw. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next, we're on to item 9B, community planning and sustainability. We've got a development permit. And I will turn it over to staff to introduce themselves and the topic.
All right, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Jessie Abraham, Planning Consultant, presenting on behalf of the Community Planning and Sustainability Department. I'm here tonight to present a development permit application for Centennial Way Phase 2. The subject property underwent a rezoning process in 2018. The District of Squamish adopted a zoning amendment bylaw number 2529 and approved a land development agreement for Centennial Way on July 20th, 2021. Development permit for Phase 1 was issued in September 2022. The Phase 2 development permit application is now brought forward for council consideration. The subject property is located at 1701 Centennial Way at the north side of Centennial. If you can see Site 1 labeled on the site plan shown here. The Mamquam River and Dike border the property to the north, and Loggers Lane runs to the west of the property. Phase 2 is accessed off Centennial Way and is about 3.6 acres in size. The Phase 2 proposal consists of 7 buildings, one 6-story mixed-use building with 1,008 square meters of commercial retail on the ground floor, 539 square meters of office space on the second floor, and 79 condos on the upper stories. A 1-story building located near the corner of Centennial Way and Loggers Lane is 200 square meters in size for commercial retail. In addition, there are 5 buildings consisting of 32 townhouses over 3 stories. Vehicle and bicycle parking meet bylaw requirements. Vehicle parking is provided via at-grade access to a covered, partially sunken parkade. This development permit application was reviewed against DP Area 3 Form and Character Guidelines. A separate site-wide delegated development permit addressing environmental protection under DP Area 1 was issued in February of this year. The site is in a flood hazard area. A flood hazard assessment was received and a covenant registered on title. In addition, the site is in a wildfire hazard area and a wildfire hazard covenant was registered on title as part of the rezoning process. The Phase 2 site design provides pedestrian permeability between buildings and access to the public dike trail. All common open spaces and pedestrian connections are secured through a public access statutory right-of-way. The development features a shared central open courtyard space between the buildings, activated with several seating and open lawn areas, a small children's play area, and a larger playground located between the development and the dike. Condos include private patios or balconies for each unit, and there is a 1,000 square foot indoor amenity space for residents that connects to the central open courtyard. There is an outdoor patio and plaza space fronting Centennial Way, adjacent to the 1-story commercial retail building that will enable additional activation at the corner of Loggers Lane. Landscape plantings throughout the site use a diverse mix of shrubs, ground covers, and grasses in accordance with the wildfire hazard guidelines. As per the land development agreement, the development includes construction and long-term maintenance of a public pavilion adjacent the dike trail. The public pavilion includes 6 parking spaces, including 1 accessible stall, a covered shelter with accessible picnic table, bike parking, accessible path, and bear-proof waste bin. Public access will be secured by statutory right-of-way, and long-term maintenance will be secured by maintenance agreement registered on title. The building's form and character is considered West Coast contemporary, featuring flat roof lines and a mixture of fiber cement lap siding and corrugated metal panel. The design includes wood and timber accents, including wood columns, beams, and soffits. The color palette draws on the nearby environmental features with accents at entryways. Given that the proposal meets DP Area 3 guidelines for form and character, staff recommend the approval of DP 594, subject to the conditions noted on this slide. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Council questions? Go ahead, Councillor French.
Thanks, Mayor. One of the advisory design panel comments called for more trees and more native species for this project. And I'm wondering, did that recommendation actually lead to more trees being added to the landscape plan? And has there been a shift to more native species in that plan?
Through the mayor, yes, there was a tree replacement plan that was reviewed and was part of the tree permit that was issued for this site. So tree species do have to meet wildfire hazard guidelines, but do include conifers as well as deciduous trees.
And how about native plant species?
Through the mayor, yes, the landscaping plan was reviewed against native plant species and are encouraged through the development permit area guidelines.
Okay, and the advisory design panel also called for a review of fire truck access. Were any changes made to better accommodate emergency vehicles?
Through the mayor, since the original submission, the one change they made to the fire lane was to pave it. The initial submission included a gravel fire lane, and so it was updated to include pavement.
Okay, and I have one more if you'll indulge me. Okay. The new pickleball courts are being built across Centennial Way from this site. Has any consideration been given to potential noise concerns for the future residents living in the units at the western edge of the property?
Through the mayor, so there is a noise covenant on site due to the proximity to the gun range. And so prior to building permit issuance, they will be required to provide a memo from a qualified professional that it meets the acoustical requirements as per the covenant. The tree buffer on the west side of the property along Loggers Lane will be maintained as well.
Great. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Council, other questions? Oh, thank you. Councillor Pettingill, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. And it's a bit of an opportunistic question, given that fire hazard covenant and flooding covenant were mentioned here. I don't actually need the answer to make this decision, but I am curious, with the natural disasters we've seen and so on, is it a concern for insurance and residents getting insurance that we are requiring these covenants? I'm not suggesting we shouldn't require them. It's just something that I was wondering. My ears perked up when I heard those conditions. So just something maybe to follow up on later. Thank you.
I'm going to take that as something to follow up on later by staff's response to your question. Do you have a question, Councillor Hamilton? Go ahead.
Thanks very much. I was struck by the amount of the securities, $40,000 for the Dyke Pavilion, $50,000 for a bus shelter. If my recollection serves, for projects similar to these that we have done have cost considerably more. We recently saw a pavilion similar to this, whose budget is about $100,000. How do we decide on these security amounts, and are we sure that these security amounts are sufficient if for some reason the project doesn't go ahead?
Through the mayor, so all of these monetary securities were included in the land development agreement. Those were the estimates at that time. So we don't have any actual flexibility. It is all wrapped into the development permit. And again, delivering the development permit as approved is a responsibility of the applicant. So I don't recall a case where we've ever had to use a landscape security to deliver amenities on site. There are other legal recourses that we can take if development doesn't meet the development permit conditions.
Okay. Councillor Stoner.
Thank you. Through the chair, in the breakdown of the number of bed units and the bedrooms of those units, it's showing that only 23% of the condos, I believe, are coming in as 3-bedroom. Our policy aims to get us at 30%. So I'm just curious why we're falling short there.
Yes, thank you. Through the mayor, that unit mix table is just for building 1, which is for the condo buildings. So when we include the townhouses, there is 45% of the project is 3 beds, which exceeds the policy.
I think it was a missed opportunity in the rezoning process where we try and get a diversity of using unit mixes in different housing forms. So they've all ended up as not all of them, majority have ended up as 3-bedroom townhomes and not as many in the apartments, which I think is a miss, but I think we're too late in this part of the process. The other piece that jumped out at me was only providing 2 bike parking stalls for the public pavilion, which seems really low. And that they're also uncovered. So I don't think we actually secured covered bike parking through the LDA, but did we secure the number of bike stalls that would be required in the public area? Or is this just kind of a generosity of the developer at this point?
Through the mayor, so the land development agreement did not specify number of bike parking stalls. The LDA did call for a minimum 200 square foot shelter and 6 vehicle parking stalls.
Okay. I've got a couple questions of my own. In the report, there were only a few pieces that that stood out to me as the ones that are somewhat met guidelines. And the one in particular was the loading areas should be at the rear of the building and access from the lane. And the staff comment is somewhat meets guideline, loading at front, no rear access. And I wondered if this reflects a change in approach, or is this a site-specific issue, and why? If you could speak to that particular point. Page 110 of 166 for those of you following along.
Through the mayor, so that's right. So one of the guidelines asks that loading areas should be at the rear of the building and accessed from a lane. For this site, there is no lane. The rear of the site also is along the Mamcram River Dike. And so there's no way to access it, the commercial retail areas from the rear.
So with that in mind, does it have a particular spot to allow this to happen? There's a front loading zone specifically, not just that it will occur from the front? Is that a set aside on the roadway or wherever that access point is?
Yes, so there's 2 vehicle accesses from Centennial Way, and there is designated 3 designated loading zones that meet the zoning bylaw requirements for loading spaces.
Okay, thank you. Council, any additional questions? Okay, so we have a recommendation here that's quite detailed. I'm looking for a mover.
I'll move the staff recommendation.
Move staff recommendation, second by Councillor French. Would you like to speak to it? No. Any other comments? Go ahead, Councillor Stoner.
Yeah, I'll support the motion on the floor. This is a development permit. There are no variances requested, and I do think it falls in line with our development permit guidelines, as well as the requirements as laid out in the LDA. I think I am regretting some of our previous decisions through the rezoning process for not being more prescriptive in our LDA for things around like public bike facilities. And so a real lesson learned here for me as we see these projects move forward. The other one that caught my eye that I think probably will require some of our attention is an update to our EV charging policy, given the provincial and federal moves to require all vehicles will be EV charged in not so far or in not so distant future. And these buildings will far outlast that. And right now we're only requiring 30% of those stalls to be EV charging capable. But that is for a later date conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor French.
Thanks, Mayor. This project has been in progress for years now, and granting this development permit supports a vision that makes just as much sense now, notwithstanding the comments we just heard from Councillor Stoner, but generally and overall, just as much sense now as it did when the developers first hatched this development idea, what feels like so long ago now. I support the new homes and the new commercial space that this phase of the development is going to deliver.
Thank you. Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, thanks. I will be supporting this because I think it is consistent with the more recent council resolutions and what we asked for from this development. I do sort of earlier in the process have a couple of regrets that we weren't able to get further on building emissions for this development, but I think council has come a fair ways in terms of ensuring that for newer developments at least. And I think given our presentation earlier today, I do wish we had secured in some form of CAC some sort of place for vehicle dwelling of some sort. This whole development did displace that that opportunity or that zoning, and it is a bit of a regret for me that we didn't push harder on that piece in moving CACs and so on forward. But again, this is consistent with the all the more recent council resolutions and support for this project, so I will support it here. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in support of the motion, this development permit, as others have mentioned, doesn't meets the guidelines and doesn't require any variances, and so I'm happy to grant it going forward. I think in general, these larger developments, the time frame associated with them is incredibly challenging, as we're always learning as we go, and policy is constantly evolving, and it's challenging to interact even with recent LDAs, and I put this in that category versus some of the even the older ones. But I'm happy to see this to see this move forward, and yeah, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
I'd like to move that we refer our EV charging requirements to the next upcoming zoning bylaw update.
I will second that. Thank you. I feel like your motion speaks for itself, Councillor, so I'll just call the question. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we're on to item 2 here, which is a development permit number 575 for waterfront land. Yeah, I was gonna get through one more before we did a 5-minute break, but yeah, let's do one more, and then we'll take a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back and finish off. And then we'll finish strong. So,
Okay,
over to you.
Thank you. We do have Susan Stratus joining us online. She's our planning consultant working on the waterfront landing project. Over to you, Susan.
I'm feeling a 5-minute break if we don't have Susan here shortly. Okay, let's do it. We'll take a 5-minute break, and we'll be back. We'll give us a chance to stretch our legs. So we're recessed for 5 minutes. and I'll welcome everybody back. We've had some technical issues, and I think we have a workaround going. It may have an echo. So we're going to go right now to development permit 575 for waterfront landing, which is the Lot 4 amenity building. I will turn it over to staff to introduce themselves on the topic.
Hey, Susan, go ahead.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I hope everyone can hear me. Could you confirm that, Jonas?
Yes, we can hear you.
And the presentation is up. Okay.
Yes, just put it in the slide mode.
Okay. My apologies, everyone. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I will just walk through the presentation tonight for the Waterfront Landing Amenity Building, DP 575. The property that we're looking at, Lot 4, is located on the east side of the Mount Blind Channel at the end of Channel Road on the Waterfront Landing property. The amenity building represents the fourth development permit on this property, and it's the final development permit on the what we call the north half of the property. So far, there have been 482 residential units approved and 2,400 square meters of commercial approved. The property is designated mixed-use commercial and zoned the same. It is within DPA 13 for Marine Village and Public Realm DP guidelines. It is also within DPA 1 for the marine shoreline. And the site is within a flood hazard area, and there is a flood covenant registered on the property. There have been two significant environmental approvals. The first one was DP 499, a delegated DP issued for Waterfront Park Shoreline in 2021. And more recently, environmental DP 50574 was related to the DFO authorization that just came through just over a week ago on September 27th for the shoreline wall and the infill pedestrian bridge, future marina construction, and habitat offsetting associated with those uses. So we have been waiting some time for that authorization to come through, and once staff was able to review the authorization, they were able to issue a DPA1 exemption on October 3rd, which did include a requirement for some additional riparian planting because the district's DPA1 guidelines exceed the DFO authorization in the case of riparian planting. The proposed development is a mix of amenity uses for the residents of Waterfront Landing and commercial development. The amenities for the residents include indoor and outdoor activities such as gym, pool, hot tub, games lounges, fitness rooms, and viewing decks. The building has a total of 2,353 square meters, of which just over 570 square meters is commercial and public uses on the ground floor. The LDA requirements require that there's a minimum of 100 square meters for commercial use, and in addition, 20% of the total gross floor area be commercial or amenity use accessible to the public, or a long-term lease to a public agency. Those requirements have been met through the combined 570 square meters of commercial spaces and washrooms that are shown in blue. And I don't know if my arrow is coming through here, but there is a washroom on the north side of the building to serve Waterfront Park. And there's public washrooms on the south side of the building that serve the public accessing the area from the pedestrian bridge. The site plan, as it's shown, the amenity building sits somewhat central in the site. There is a parking lot on the east side of the building that comes in from Channel Road. There is a temporary bridge access that leads to the pedestrian bridge, and this bridge access is actually on the adjacent property, and the district will be obtaining a stat right-of-way to secure that during the temporary construction period. The landscaping buffers the residential area, phase 2A, to the east side of the site, and provides trees and plantings along the outer perimeter of the property. Looking at the plans through sections, the top drawing shows the building in relation to the pedestrian bridge, where there's a fairly broad 15-meter setback, providing for both a pedestrian walkway and a combined multi-use trail. The two bottom drawings show the building in relation to the waterfront on the north side and adjacent to the residential buildings on the bottom right-hand side drawing. This is a fairly important site in terms of connectivity to the waterfront park and the pedestrian bridge. The Channel Road has a multi-use path that comes down and joins the pathway to the pedestrian bridge. And then along the Mamcombe Blind Channel, there is both a pedestrian walkway, kind of a zigzag design shown in blue, and a multi-use trail that's combined pedestrian and cycle path in green. And those join in with the waterfront park trails to the north side. There's also a fairly major multi-use pathway located between the amenity building site and phase 2A to the east. And just to confirm, I have had some questions about what's district owned and maintained. So the pedestrian bridge, waterfront park, and Channel Road are the district owned and maintained parcels, and the others are all strata maintained and within the strata parcels. Looking at the building form and character, the development provides a contemporary approach to marine industrial building with a fairly simple form and massing that's meant to suit the functional requirements of the building, of the uses that are within it. Neutral finishes have been used with large areas of glazing, and there are large upper viewing decks to break up the outside mass of the building, giving people an opportunity to gather and look out over the Mamcombe Blind Channel. Some of the Preston images the architect used involved industrial buildings in Steveston, Britannia Beach, and other locations to design the building with the simple building form that they've provided. Looking at the south end of the building, one of the important features is the integration with the waterfront park. The applicants have provided some external play areas here, as well as the access to the washrooms shown in red. Climbing boulders and family seating areas are provided at that north end. And just looking at some of the sustainability features, the building does meet step code requirements and restores a brownfield site. It does maximize solar gain, and I guess one of the issues with this building is actually cooling, and it has provided louvered metal screens on one side to help with the cooling. It is using an air source heat pump that is supplemented by gas for some of the high demand areas such as hot water. There are rain gardens and on the landscaping and parking lot areas. The proposal does exceed the bike parking that's required. I think there are 6 spaces required and it provides 30. And some of the site furnishings are locally going to be locally constructed with local materials such as the benches. The main materials used on the building are standing seam metal siding. The lower areas in brown are a cementitious cladding and a wood finish. And bright colors, the red doors, have been used to identify the public use areas. And just looking at the landscaping, there's a lot of wood and stone and natural materials being used in the landscaping. So the recommendations and next steps are staff do support issuance of DP 575 for the amenity building. There are no zoning bylaw variances required. The DP guidelines have been met as shown in the staff report. There are a number of steps prior to issuance of building permit that are listed in the development permit itself. provision of landscape security, provision of a servicing agreement for infrastructure. A Section 219 covenant is required to secure the commercial space and public uses. A stat right-of-way is required for future dike access, a standard district requirement. And a Section 219 covenant is required to secure the additional habitat compensation that is provided as part of the DPA1 exemption. And just a final update on some of as we've been waiting for the DFO approval to come through, this has now allowed a number of things to move forward. The pedestrian bridge, the site preparation for the foreshore work did start last week, and construction of the bridge and the foreshore itself will be starting later in October of later this month. The bridge is being tendered and completion is targeted for Q4 2024 in line with the LDA requirement for final occupancy for phase 3A. And Waterfront Park, phase 1, as I believe Council is aware, was opened in September. Phase 2, the north half or 2/3 of the park is intended to be completed this coming spring and summer in 2024. Constructed in spring and summer with completion in the fall of 2024. And there is a small section of the phase 3 park that abuts the amenity building that is going to be constructed with the amenity building. And completion there is targeted for mid-2025. And that's it for my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for working for all the work on the file, as well as working to resolve our technical issues, work around here. Council, questions? Councillor Stoner?
Thank you. Through the chair. Can Ms. Stratus hear us?
Please. I can pass it.
All right. So my first question is, I'm curious, what was envisioned or expected from Section 19 of the LDA in terms of public uses space? So Section 19 reads, public uses in addition to item 18, a minimum of 20% of total gross floor area in phase 4A shall be located on the ground floor and be accessible to the public, either in the form of long-term lease available to a public body or agency, or in the form of commercial or amenity use that is available to all members of the public. What is that going to be?
Through the mayor, the expectation in the LDA was, or the intent was, to either secure a commercial use that's open to the public, or if that didn't happen, the default would be that there'd be some kind of a public use subject to a lease with a district or some other public body. The intent is not clear yet. We know that the applicants are looking at a restaurant use. However, a restaurant use in this location would require a parking variance because there's enough parking. So that question is still open. But for former character development permit, we don't need to determine that just yet. But that was the intent of that LDA clause.
Okay, the rationale there for my question, if I follow it through, is that it seems like the square footage for that 20% of public space has been combined with the 100 meters of commercial space. So there isn't the full 20% of public space being provided. It's shy of about 20 square meters, but it has been incorporated into the commercial CRU unit. And so I'm just curious, as I read the land development agreement and the clauses 18, 19, that doesn't feel like it's interchangeable in terms of the amenity that's being provided, but we're counting it as interchangeable here.
That's fine. Susan, I can just see your Explorer screen, not the presentation.
Okay, there we go. Is that it? Okay, I'll
Yeah.
just go back to the can I be can I be heard at the meeting now?
Yes.
Okay, apologize again for how clumsy this is. So the again, the LDA requirements are for a minimum of 100 square meters of commercial use. That has been met and slightly exceeded here in this lower quadrant where there's a commercial space here of 117 square meters. And then there are 428 square meters here. And combined, it adds up to 570.7. That includes also the 2 washroom areas. So the LDA requirements are met primarily through the commercial spaces here. The applicants were not able to come forward with a public agency, and in fact, that I think that was probably a somewhat hopeful clause in the LDA that a public agency might come forward to lease the space. That doesn't mean that a public agency won't, but at this point, it's just being presented as commercial space, CRU space, and the applicants have not got any tenants in mind at this point. As Jonas mentioned, a restaurant was discussed, but that hasn't been firmed up in any way at this point.
All right, I'll leave that one for now. My other question is, are there requirements on hours of operation or accessibility for the public washrooms?
Susan, could you speak to the requirements of hours of operation or accessibility for the public washrooms?
Yes, these washrooms are both fully accessible. That was an issue that was raised by the ADP, and the washrooms were expanded. So the public washrooms are both fully, the ones at the north and south side of the building are both fully accessible. They all have children's change stations in them. And the washrooms within the amenity portion of the building are also fully accessible. I think that was an issue that the applicants responded to that the ADP had raised.
And Susan, could you speak to hours of operation?
We have a draft Section 219 covenant that we're just beginning discussions on with the applicants. And at this point, the hours of operation are proposed as 7 in the morning till 10 at night. And we haven't gone through any detailed review of that with the applicants at this point. That's what we have proposed. And I think the hours of operation are intended to be similar to what the district provides in other public park settings. And they may change, I think, in the winter compared to the summertime. So those are refinements that we're working on through the Section 219 covenant.
Okay, thank you. Councillor French?
Thanks, Mayor. One of the advisory design panel recommendations was to install lift mounting hardware at the pool. Was that particular recommendation incorporated into this current planning?
Susan, do we have any detail yet about the ADP recommendation to install a lift mount at the pool?
No, I don't have any information on that. I'm sorry.
It is something that it's beyond the form and character of this development permit. Usually it deals with the external facilities of the building.
Okay. And the recycling and garbage room, to me, it seems large. So I'm wondering if that's serving just this building, or is it also serving the surrounding residential units?
I'm sorry, could you just repeat the beginning of that question?
Yeah, the recycling and garbage room that is part of this development. It seems large for this building, so I'm curious to know if it's serving just the amenity building or also residential units nearby.
Susan, could you confirm if the recycling facilities in the building only serve this building or the building or any adjacent buildings?
The recycling facilities are in a separate building, which I think shows on the screen here. And that's meant to serve just the amenity building and the commercial uses. That are not meant to serve anywhere else. They're sized for the amenity building and commercial uses.
Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Council, additional questions? We do also have a staff recommendation if someone's ready to go there. Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, just wondering with the resident amenities, so not the public amenities, would the strata, if it so chooses, have the ability to open that up to the public if as a strata they chose to, or does do our various covenants and agreements require that always be exclusively for residents?
Through the mayor, I can answer this question. No, we don't have any covenants or restrictions. So if Strata chose to open it up to the general public, they could. In fact, we've had conversations with the developer to see if we could make this happen, but without success to date. But it's up to them.
Thank you. Other questions? Councillor Anderson?
Be prepared to move the recommendation.
Okay, so you're moving the staff recommendation. Is there a seconder? Second by Councillor Hamilton. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor Anderson?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to offer a very general observation relating to the goals stated in the Waterfront Landing Subarea Plan, as are cited in the design rationale document that Council has in its package relating to this matter, relating to heritage, distinctiveness, and authenticity. I'm not going to say this is not a successful building design. I think that what has been delivered here is an attractive signature building. It's a good fit with respect to several considerations. However, this is not Squamish Marine Industrial. To cite from the Heritage Context Marine Industrial sheet here, it's referring to clad in a white standing seam metal cladding, making a strong reference to the marine industrial precedents. There are no such precedents here in Squamish. There are no pictures of the sawmill that existed here in the site. I'm going to make a collective criticism. I think we all need to work on this, but there's absolutely no information about the previous site use or buildings. Two things are missed here. The sawmill buildings had a very distinctive architecture. Several of them, principal buildings, had a rounded roof that was quite unusual and attractive. Another thing is that the sawmill is the reason we have such a large Sikh community here in Squamish. We had 2 generations of Sikh employees forming a large part of the workforce there. So the previous land use is explaining a lot of our community character. Advisory design panel members have commented on missed opportunity for use of wood, in particular in the cladding. We have here wood finish cementitious cladding. It's interesting that in downtown Stockholm, they have 4 high-rise buildings under construction clad in Western red cedar, probably from Squamish. So there is reference to public art planning. Here is yet an opportunity that might await for reference to the cultural associations that exist on this site It was, after all, a long-time anchor industry of the community, 2 generations of Sikh families in particular working here. We have architects that obviously care and they want to deliver distinctiveness. But what is authenticity and distinctiveness for Squamish? It's an important question because we have a lot of prime waterfront real estate yet to be developed, and I think we should give attention to this. It would help our architects and planners who care, who want to deliver this, that we have better sub-area plans, neighborhood plans, and a heritage strategy that offers information, context information, heritage context information. That's the missing piece. Sorry, I've been on a bit of a rant here, but as I mentioned, we have a lot of prime waterfront here, and why shouldn't we be special and deliver special, distinctive character, genuine to Squamish? This building's great, but it's not Squamish, actually. But that doesn't matter. It's a great building. But let's deliver distinctiveness if that's what we want to deliver. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, other comments? Nope. I'll venture some of my own. I'm happy to see this amenity piece move forward. I know that we've heard from some residents of those existing residents over there that are eager to see they've been sold an amenity building when they made their purchase, and they're eager to see this. I also think that it really rounds out the sort of the arrival to that side of the water for the new pedestrian bridge. So I'm happy to see this move forward, and I'll be supporting. Councillor Stoner.
Yeah, thank you. I too will be supporting the motion on the floor. I do think that it is important that this amenity building does get delivered for the residents of the waterfront landing area. I do think more generally, there might be a bit of disappointment in terms of the public accessibility to this building, especially on the front end piece where there was some notation that it might be able to be available as through a public agency or body, and probably the market rents are just not actually accessible to that. I do think it will be good that it's still some form of commercial use that will be more welcoming to the public. And I think that the public washrooms will be a huge benefit to the area. So I will support the motion on the floor. Thanks.
Thank you. Seeing no other hands, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And thank you to both of you for working through those technical difficulties there. Yeah. So next up, we have the WLNG Fortis Eagle Mountain Pipeline project update. And
the market rents are just not actually accessible to that.
Someone's we got that. Well, I think we're covered. Sorry, went back in time there. So we'll give our staff a minute to get set up here. As you're getting set up, I'll just do a brief intro to this topic where these updates are from our staff, and this is an opportunity we've created as a council to keep ourselves and the community up to date with the many moving pieces of this project. We receive these quarterly, and that's what we're about to dig into. So I will turn it over to our staff to introduce themselves and take us through the presentation.
All right. Thank you very much, Mayor, and good evening, Council. My name is Kate Mulligan. I am the Economic Development Officer for the District of Squamish, and I'm joined tonight by Julie Wenge, GM of Community Planning and Sustainability. So tonight's presentation aims to summarize activities for the July through September 2023 period related to each project, both WLNG and Fortis, and provide anticipated project activities for the coming months. Currently, both projects are in the construction phase, with 30-day construction notice provided by Woodfibre liquefied natural gas, as well as construction notice provided by Fortis. Initial works include site clearing and mobilization for the EGP project, with initial works for WLNG, including site preparation. Between July and September, district staff scoped project activities impacting various district departments and identified capacity requirements. Staff continued to engage with project proponents during regularly scheduled technical working group meetings and specific meetings tied to permitting and plan review processes. District staff continued to process in-stream applications relating to site preparation for both projects and reviewed various management plans during this period. Specific to the EGP project, district staff received additional information from Fortis BC to support their temporary use applications for the laydown lodge areas while advancing discussions regarding the Finch Storm main design with the EGP project team. Specific to the WLNG project, staff provided feedback to WLNG regarding their development-related permits, including their DPA 10 application. The district also received a temporary use permit for a temporary workforce accommodation known as the Flotel. Staff are presently in the process of reviewing this application. Of note, the temporary use permit application is dependent on the approval of an amendment to the project's environmental assessment certificate in addition to municipal approvals. The district also received various management plans and supporting project plans for review purposes. Upcoming project activities include the review of related management plans with feedback to be provided to the Environmental Assessment Office and proponents, the processing of related permit applications, including related temporary use permits, and the implementation of general organization administrative processes. I'll now hand it over to Julie Wenke for the remainder of the presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Mulligan. And as mentioned by Ms. Mulligan, this report that we provide to Council covers the period from July to September. We do the report in advance. But there are a couple of additional activities that we just wanted to highlight for you. And the first is in relation to capacity funding. So staff are seeking alternative means to fund the significant amount of district work that is required for the project that is beyond taxpayer funding, with the intention that this funding will address the exponential increase in staff workloads related to both projects, while staff continue to deliver equitable service to the community and keep our strategic goals moving forward. The second additional activity that has occurred since the production of this report is the notification that some pipeline delivery is about to commence. So starting October 23rd, 2023, Fortis BC contractors will begin transporting the steel pipe, commonly referred to as the line pipe, for the Eagle Mountain Woodfibre Gas Pipeline EGP project. From the Squamish terminals to the Fortis BC construction staging location at the BC Rail properties. We have been advised that deliveries will occur on Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. and on Saturdays between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. over an anticipated 3-week period. Fortis BC anticipates deliveries will add approximately 5 trucks per hour to existing traffic volumes, and trucks will be travelling on the district's designated truck routes, including 3rd Avenue, Vancouver Street, Loggers Lane, Cleveland Avenue, Highway 99, Industrial Way, Queensway, and Government Road. Fortis BC have updated their EGP website project page with this information, and the link can be found below. In relation to district readiness for this activity, staff are fully engaged in understanding the details of the pipe transportation plan from the Fortis BC team, and also planning for district community readiness as well. As the transportation of the pipe gets underway, staff will remain in close contact with the Fortis BC to monitor any issues that arise, and the district will keep the community apprised of developments and expect Fortis BC to communicate regularly and transparently with the public as well. The district is asking the public to direct questions with respect to the transportation of the pipe or the project directly to Fortis BC via their community line or via the email shown on the slide.
So at this time, we'd like to hand it back to the mayor and council for questions and or comments, and various staff are on hand to respond to questions on specific topics. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor French.
Thanks, Mayor. I saw in the report that the district has requested that Woodfibre LNG and FortisBC consider additional capacity funding to establish a district project management team to support regulatory and other project-related requirements related to the projects. And I understand there's an update to that. I wonder if you could update us on that.
Sorry, through the chair, we are still in conversations with the proponents regarding that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Council, other questions? Go ahead, Councillor Stoner.
Thank you. Through the chair, looking forward to the remainder of 2023 and the anticipated activities. One that I know is of particular interest is the council presentation for the laydown and temporary workforce accommodation TUPs. I'm just wondering if staff have an estimate on when that might be coming forward based on the information we've received from the proponent, or if that timeline is still to be determined.
Presently, staff have been reviewing the new information provided and will be writing a report for submission. It's anticipated in the next 2 months, roughly, that presentations will be provided to council.
Thank you. Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, just on that last point, are we sort of being mindful of December and Christmas holidays? I know over and over in these processes, I hear people say, like, don't dump something like this on us right before or right after Christmas. We need some time to consume and engage and so on. So are we keeping mindful of that in some of our planning?
Through the chair, it's staff's understanding that the process will be considered through the agending planning process. And through that process, we will ensure that there's proper engagement with public and time for public to consider information that's being provided and respond.
I'll speak to that as well. As agenda setting is something that falls to the mayor, and that's absolutely something that I'm keeping an eye on as we go about setting the agendas. I think the aim is to have this at a time where the public can engage in a meaningful way, and to give enough room in advance for the public to consume what's likely a large amount of information. So, but both of those pieces require everything being ready to go. So at this point, it's in staff's court, and when it's ready to go, it'll fall back to myself and the acting mayor that attends those agenda planning meetings, wherever that happens, and wherever that falls in the timeline, and then we'll set the agenda from there. But I'll be sure. But the aim is to have lots of time for the public to absorb, and for it to be timed at a place that's that will have maximum uptake of public participation.
Okay, thank you. And then my other question is just understanding this pipeline delivery. Like, Fortis have had requirements to provide a number of different management plans and so on to us. Was this pipeline delivery outlined in any of those plans?
Through the chair, to my knowledge, no, it was not. We did not have this in the management plans itself.
Okay, so is it fair to say this sort of took us a little bit by surprise?
Through the chair, it has been a relatively short timeline in which we have known about the timeline for delivery of the pipeline. But we have, staff has been working diligently since that time to ensure that we are ready and working with the proponents for the delivery.
Okay, and from staff's perspective, have we had enough lead time to sort of, we've provided a fair bit of feedback in the past to the ministry and Fortis and Woodfibre about adequate engagement and so on. Did this meet that standard in terms of informing us and letting us sort of understand what's going on here?
Through the chair, from staff always appreciate a far greater timeline to be able to prepare. I would say that this timeline has been quite constrained, and it would have been of assistance if we had the information prior to the date of receipt.
Okay, it's a very diplomatic answer, but thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stoner.
Thank you. Can staff just remind me, I should know this off the top of my head, but the EA amendments for the EGP worker accommodation, has that been approved by the province?
Not to my knowledge.
And has the EA amendment for the flotel for Woodfibre been approved by the province?
No, I have not received confirmation from the EAO of any approval at this time.
So can staff speak to how we advance an application for a TUP for projects that have not yet been approved by the province?
Our understanding from the EAO office is that a decision will be made shortly. That is why at this time we've received the TUP and staff are waiting for additional information. The TUP approval would be conditional on any approval for certificate amendment.
Thank you. One of the pieces that I feel that I was hoping to see come back as part of the TUP discussion was a worker code of conduct. And I see in the table provided, I'm trying to, where does it say that final version shared with no further revisions to be considered? That seems like a very hard close there. Could you speak to the status of that, and has that moved from previous versions that we saw? Generally, I believe last time we saw this was part of the TUP discussion.
Through the chair, the worker code of conduct, I just want to clarify, are you referring to the EGP worker code of conduct or the WLNG worker code of conduct?
I'm interested in both, but I was referring to the Fortis Eagle Mountain Pipeline code of conduct.
Thank you for the clarification. Through the chair, we received notification from Fortis BC that the code of conduct was considered final with no consideration for changes to be made, despite comments that were provided to the proponents regarding the code of conduct from the district and I believe other stakeholders within the community.
I've made comments in the past and at sort of every opportunity that the code of conduct between these two entities should be aligned, and that's without going into the strength of the code of conduct. So given that we haven't seen the Woodfibre one yet, yeah, that's incredibly frustrating. So thank you. I know that's not you, but it has to be said. I'll go to Councillor Pettingill for now.
No, sorry, I left my hand up. I could go on for 3 hours, but I don't think people want me to. So
no, we eventually we need to. This is just an update from our staff, and the only decision here is whether we receive the report as an accurate snapshot of what's happening. So we all, I think, could go on with this. Do we have any other questions for our staff on the contents of this report, or something that you hope to see here that isn't here? Okay, we do have a staff recommendation. Go ahead, Councillor Stoner.
I'll move receipt.
Move receipt, second by Councillor Hamilton. Great. We'll do a round of comments here. Go ahead.
Yeah, just briefly, thanks to staff for the quarterly updates. I think that these are really important updates for our council and our community to understand where this project is at and the ongoing effort that it's taking our staff to be able to respond to the increasing volume of work. Appreciate the additional late additions to some of the activities going on in terms of trying to secure some additional capacity funding from these proponents so that we can ensure that it's not slowing down the whole process. But it means that we will have capacity to move this project along in its due form, as well as the other pieces that we know are most critical for our community. Although it's extremely frustrating on the short timelines that we've received for the most recent and probably the first most visible component of the project in our community, the movement of the pipeline, I am confident that staff will be working with the proponent to make sure that is as seamless as possible, especially for our business community through the business part, because I think that's probably where the biggest implication will be. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, I appreciate the work staff is doing to sort of consolidate all the information as best we can, but it is incredibly frustrating that we're having trouble getting the information in a meaningful way, that we're the ones having to put it all together. We're told about how large and wonderful these projects are, but they can't seem to share accurate information in a simple, digestible way to our community. And so, I'm glad that our staff is there to do what we can for our community. And I know that our staff is sharing our ongoing frustrations with the EAO and other regulatory bodies. And I think we need to continue doing that. And yeah, it's just endlessly frustrating to be having the same conversation over and over again. But thank you to staff.
Thank you. Other comments? I'll thank staff for for your continual work on this file in general, and for putting this report together. I think it paints a picture, an accurate picture of the amount of work that that this project has triggered inside this organization, and how frustrating it is, where a lot of the issues that we've been raising as a community since the inception of this project still remain. I think we've been trying to emphasize throughout this process that we expect transparency, and we're not seeing that, frankly, particularly with relation to the upcoming pipe movements, we'll say, throughout the community. I think these entities surely can do better, and frankly, I would expect this work here that you've done. These are updates that they should be providing to our community. We've had to create this opportunity with our own staff resources in our own space to keep our community abreast to the happenings of this project. And really, I feel this is filling a communication void that this project and both of its proponents seem to persist with this amount of communication that might be considered just enough by someone somewhere in the along the line, but not here. So thank you for bringing this forward, and it does highlight the amount of work that we have ahead of us as this project seems to be advancing. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you very much for your work and for sticking around till this late hour to deliver that report. So back to our agenda, we've already handled item 4 there, the Redbridge piece. We have no late agenda items. Oh, sorry. Now we're on to correspondence. So we have no correspondence action requested, but we do have correspondence referred from the consent agenda. So Councillor Pettingill, it was item 1 and 2. Would you like, the floor is yours.
Yeah, so the first one, I did have a motion, and just for some context, the BC Energy Regulator, both the SLRD and the district at various times have asked for more time for a number of the effluent permits, for more time for the community, and with the Fortis, their engagement in particular was specifically lacking for the community to understand and respond to the permit. The regulator thankfully did request require that Fortis do more engagement, but in the meantime have granted them a temporary year and a half long permit to just go and dump in the effluent anyways before that regular permitting process has been considered, which completely undermines the whole process of and the whole value in the permit process. So I wanted to propose a resolution stating our dissatisfaction to that. I did send it to council. I'm not sure if I should read it out at this point.
Yeah, I think reading it into the record would be appropriate.
Okay, so whereas over several years, the District of Squamish, the province, and the public have frequently communicated that Fortis BC's public engagement on their project and permits has been inadequate with limited improvement from Fortis BC on their engagement practices, and whereas Fortis BC has freely chosen to enter into contracts and obligations with timelines that make it difficult for Fortis BC to adequately deal with lacking engagement and necessary mitigations, thereby putting the consequences of its inadequate permit engagement upon the public, and whereas the proponents' continued and willful failures to engage in required permit processes should not enable them to bypass fair process and engagement, resolved that the mayor communicates with the BC Energy Regulator, Minister Osborne, and any other relevant parties regarding concerns that granting a temporary permit to Fortis for effluent discharge undermines the purpose and value of the permit process and puts critical ecosystems and reliant economic development interests at risk, and resolve that the mayor requests that Fortis BC's temporary effluent permits be revoked, paused, or otherwise suspended in favor of the regular permit process.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Stoner. Would you like to speak to it? Although I feel like your motion kind of speaks to itself, but do you have anything further to add to that before I go to the rest of the room?
I tried to encapsulate in the motion. I apologize. I'm fighting this darn cold, so mumbling and not speaking.
No, it was good and thorough. I just want to give you an opportunity to speak to it if you felt you need to add anything. No, okay. And other comments? Councillor Stoner, go ahead.
I'll support the motion on the floor. I think this is a fair approach to the challenge and the process that we're seeing. And this isn't the first example. There's many examples where the provincial permitting process feels like it's undermined, especially in terms of its opportunity for public engagement and fair process. And I think it's important that we continue to highlight that to the province every opportunity that we have, which unfortunately there are far too many of them. So we'll support this motion.
Thank you. Council, other comments? I'll be supporting the motion. I think that in my experience of engaging with this project and the regulatory systems that involved, I'm having a hard time keeping the faith in the processes, and we need strong regulatory controls in our society, and things like this just should undermine the public confidence. I know it's undermined my confidence in these processes, so I'm happy to write that letter and make this ask on behalf of our community. I'll call a question. All in favor? Any opposed? Councillor Anderson and French opposed. Motion carries. Thank you. Oh, there's another letter, Councillor Pettingill. Yeah, go ahead.
I guess I also need a motion to receive on that one, do we? Or
we actioned. That's better than receiving. We're good. Okay. On to the next one, though.
Yeah, this one I just had a couple comments, and I think we've already, I mean, it's deja vu all over again, all over again, all over again. I haven't seen the actual TUP proposal, so I don't want to get too far into specifics, but I noticed that Fortis is still using the community table term, and that does not include the whole community. It's a very curated by Fortis list of stakeholders, and it's endlessly frustrating to me that Fortis is still trying to present as if they have engaged the community. We've just spoken at length a few times about how engagement is lacking over and over again. It's really still sort of choked to see Fortis threatening live out allowances and just take it, or we will try and dump a whole bunch of workers on your community, and their unwillingness to engage on the things the community has been asking for literally years and years and years. It's really, really frustrating, and I think Fortis is going to need to do better if they want to see the outcomes they would actually like to have and that would benefit their project. And I just one final thought. I hope Fortis has taken the time and maybe gives it some more consideration, wants to give staff an update, but to really consider the rationale behind the public feedback they've been getting. And so, you know, is the issue, you know, what's driving the concern about the number of vehicles at the specific work camp, and have they dealt with those specific underlying issues? As an example, I guess from everything I've seen, I'm skeptical that Fortis has actually done that work yet, but I guess we shall see. I guess I will leave others with the chance to comment and not make a motion to receive yet.
Just procedurally, I'm going to make a motion to receive, and then we'll go around and do and then if seconded, we will go around and do comments, because I think that's where this is headed. Do I have a seconder? Sure. Go ahead. My motion is not seconded, but I will go to Councillor Stoner.
I would assume that this would happen, but I would like to refer this to the staff report that comes with the TUP.
Once received, that's its final destination.
Is that where it goes? Oh.
So we'll go motion to receive with this, and that will be received into our various processes, including the TUP. So are you seconding that then? Okay. So I think I thought this letter was important to bring to an open meeting in advance of the TUP discussion, so the community could see how far things have moved or how far things haven't moved. And we will be seeing this back as part of the TUP package and the TUP discussion. I know we've received some, we're likely to receive some, I think we've already received some comments from some folks mentioned in the letter. I think Squamish Canyon has chimed in with comment on this letter and their interactions with the project. So this is a piece of striving to be as transparent as possible throughout these processes and sharing communications as openly as I can figure out to as going forward. So I think receipt is where this belongs, but it clearly feeds into our next or future steps in our processes. No other comments on this piece? Go ahead.
Mayor Herford, this present report or letter before us contains a number of references to the Mampcombe Forest Service Road and Powerhouse Springs Road and initiatives to address other stakeholders and maintenance. My general comment is that while we can talk about communication gestures from one or another proponent and things that we see, what we really need is a forum to sort out these road issues together. Missing is a number of other stakeholders besides Squamish Canyon and Fortis, and not only stakeholders, but expertise. There's a lot of difficult issues in these roads. They're also addressed in our backcountry camping pressures committee that we have. But I feel that we're missing a table or a platform to bring these people together. And I think that Fortis is missing that too. So a constructive response would be to encourage that. There's a number of issues. These are needing to be resolved. And I think we need to bring some new people to the table and some new expertise to help us resolve them with Fortis. I just wanted to make the observation, particularly on these road issues. They're important. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton.
Thanks very much. I was quite happy to see this letter come through. I noted that it was nearly a year since I had sat in this room gave some recommendations, gave my initial response to the TUP applications on the table. And in that year, I saw no movement. In this letter, I see some small movement. I'm not yet anywhere near convinced that the movement that this letter presents is sufficient to address our community's concerns. So I look forward to the TUP application presentations from staff and the public conversations that will come from it. Thanks.
Thank you. Seeing no other hands, I'll call a question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And thank you, Councillor Pettingill, for spurring further conversation on those two. Any business arising from the minutes? Committee minutes and reports, there's nothing there. Any council, any notice of motion? Seeing none. We have no council or staff in camera announcements. We have no unscheduled public attendance. Open question period. Any clarification related to agenda items from anybody in the audience? Okay, yep. Go ahead. No, it just happens.
That's very impressive. I'm just wondering if someone on the staff here can confirm when they were told about the pipe coming for the Fortis BC pipeline, like the actual date.
And before we get you that answer, can you just state your name? State your name and organization. One second.
Sure, I'm Andrew Hughes. I'm a journalist with the Squamish Chief.
Thank you. Does someone from staff able to comment on that? You can do it from there, I believe.
Through the mayor, apologies, I'm not back on the video there. Julie Vengi, General Manager of Community Planning and Sustainability. Staff were informed by a third party on October 4 about a delivery due to be made to the BC Rail properties.
Yep, you can ask a follow-up. Although we need your mic on.
Was the third party not Fortis BC?
Through the chair, the third party was not Fortis BC.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions of clarification from our audience or online, I suppose, but not seeing any. So we'll move on to council or staff announcements. Councillor French.
Thanks, Mayor. Saturday, October the 7th, I attended, despite not having any young children, the Alex Monroe Fire Hall #1 open house. It was a beautiful sunny day, really warm. There were a ton of kids when I arrived, well into it, and I was told, even though I felt it was busy when I arrived, I was told that this was not busy. I should have been there an hour ago. And it was not lost on me that there was a bouncy castle. And the bouncy castle was a house on fire. And the children were climbing up the back of the bouncy castle and jumping out of what appeared to be a burning building. It was classic. Great time had by all. And I want to thank all the firefighters who were there on the day and helped in advance to make it happen.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else with the, yep, go ahead, Councillor Stoner.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, this past Friday, the House Sound Community Forum was held in Whistler. Mayor Herford and myself were there. Councillor Pettingill had to send his regrets because he's still not feeling 100%. Thanks for keeping us all healthy, Councillor Pettingill. As always, it was a fantastic opportunity to connect with other electeds as well as staff and relevant organizations to the Howe Sound community area. It's always fascinating to hear what other folks are up to, and a few pieces of work that are relevant and can cross the entire region. Gibson's is also working on a urban tree canopy study and some work that I know that we're starting to advance here in the district. So I think that there'll be some interesting tie-ins there. I'm just trying to think through all my notes here, who else is doing what. Bowen has a lot of work going on in terms of asset management, similar to us, as well as a very active conversation about a proposed park for the Metro Vancouver region on Bowen. And Mayor Seeger from West Van took every opportunity he could to highlight his ongoing pet project to develop a bike path following the CN rail from West Van to Whistler. So we'll see if that ever gains some traction. I would also just note that MLA Sturdy and MP Weiler were there and provided a substantive number of updates as well, somewhat related to the Howe Sound region from an environmental perspective, maybe not so much, but there is a lot going on especially on housing. And as we saw yesterday, the short-term rentals component came in from the province, which will probably have some substantial legislation changes for us here at the district and across the region. But yeah, just wanted to identify some of the work that's going on there. The Howe Sound, I always forget what the actual Unity plan is called, but it's the implementation plan for the Akatsum Howe Sound by UNESCO Biosphere Reserve designation is now draft and available on the website. And I highly encourage folks to take a look at that and see if there's anything in there. They're still taking feedback from communities who are part of that UNESCO Biosphere Reserve, of which we are. So if you haven't had a chance to read it yet, I highly recommend that you do.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, thanks. I'm going to be a bit of a Debbie Downer, a little bit a sad passing. We lost Dee Hildebrand in the last week, and anyone who's run in local elections in the last few terms would have come across Dee. She was sort of tireless in being engaged and supporting candidates and making sure there's a forum for us to engage and so on. And she's quite a character, and it feels like we've lost a few special people in the last month or two, which is a challenge. And see if I can, I was critical of quite a few things in this meeting, and it's a bit of sad news to think about, but I just want to highlight that also, despite fighting some sort of cold or something, very glad to see the change in weather and the leaves, and very thankful overall to be still in this amazing place we live. It's nice to have the rain and not be worrying so much about forest fires now. And so overall, it's still just, we're all very lucky. So it's something I try to keep in mind right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other updates, Council? I'll venture some of my own thoughts here. On October 4th, we had the first youth council meeting, and we had some returning members. It was the first meeting of this session of youth council, and as our third will be our third youth council. And we had some returning members and some new members to meet. It was really great to hear them talk about their priorities and start batting around some ideas and how they can be the most impactful to our community. I'm really looking forward to working with that group throughout the kind of runs on the school year. So just getting started there, but big things. And every time I interact with the youth council in particular, or youth in our community, I suppose, I just come away inspired. We've got some bright young minds, and coming up. And as we sit around this table, I often think about conversations I've had with members of youth members of our community, and transportation came up a lot, and we were able to bring some of that feedback directly into the next council meeting where we discussed BC Transit. So I really enjoy working with the Youth Council, and I'm looking forward to seeing what we can achieve together this year. Councillor Stoner did a great summary of the Howe Sound Community Forum. I will add that one of the things that really struck me is for an area that's a coastal rainforest, there sure was a lot of conversation about forest fire risk. And these are from areas like Bowen Island. It's known to be lush and have, the ferns seem to be 8 feet tall there, which signifies there's lots of water. And it's not. Things are changing. And the leadership of these communities, and including ourselves, we're well aware of that. And to see an interest in emergency planning and wildfire mitigation in a coastal region like this is a distinct change from when I started as an elected official in 2018. So in a very short period of time, we're seeing a huge change in our, I believe, the perception of risk, if not the real risk, to our communities. So it was very, very shocking. And of course, with the folks from the Sunshine Coast and their ongoing challenges with drought conditions and water sources, it's really remarkable. Often I really appreciate that that forum. Often our areas of responsibility or sort of groupings are so arbitrary with our municipality, and then our regional district, and then the school board and the health authority and all these things, and really having Equepsum Howe Sound as a center for bringing all these community groups together and working in areas that of mutual interest and also sharing ideas is always find valuable. This Saturday the Rotary Club of Squamish put on their gala event, and I've attended on Saturday night. As with any Rotary event, if anyone's attended Rotary events, always have a good cause to work towards and are just so generous. There was a huge section of the night that was silent auction, and there was some live auction. The beneficiaries of this year's gala auction and fundraiser were the playground at Squamish Feather Park at the oceanfront, John Gulo Home for Children in Mexico, and the Center of Hope Refuge for Girls in the Philippines. There was over $17,000 in auction items to be bid on. And the total hasn't been tallied, but I witnessed some incredible generosity from our community. And this particular group of individuals has somewhat quietly goes about having massive impact, not only in our community, but far more broadly. So it was great to see that in action. And that's a short version of my update, as I will keep everyone here for any more time. So we don't have a motion to close, so I will be looking for a motion to terminate, which clearly goes to Councillor Hamilton and seconded by Councillor Stoner. All in favor?